Hi, I'm Jim Toohey, founder of Aging with Dignity. Last week I talked about 5 wishes and why I created it and how useful it's been in America with 41 million copies available in, of course, 30 languages. 5 wishes is an advanced directive that helps individuals and families plan for and discuss end-of-life care and helps families also recognize that you can maintain peace and have patient self-determination and exercise your legal rights during times when you're ill. This week we have with us Margaret McGahon, a psychotherapist who handles a lot of individual cases in clinical settings with families that have struggled with discussions so serious as this, and what happens when you don't have these discussions. Maggie, I wanted to begin just with some of the elements of 5 wishes. Of course, the first and second wishes are legal matters. It's a living will, an appointment of a durable power of attorney for health care. But what made 5 wishes so popular were wishes 3, 4, and 5. When I filled out my 5 wishes, you can see just from looking at this, I crossed through so many areas, added so much, so I could be very clear in giving instructions to family members, and it would refresh my wife's understanding of what my wishes are. Wish 3 talks about comfort. And it talks about dignity in wish 4. When you're in a clinical setting, what do you run into with individuals who've gone through the death of a loved one?
So after the death.
After the death.
Yeah, so I think sometimes what we see a lot, and this is where the 5 wishes is actually wonderful, is there can be regret. Sometimes we see family members have regret because in those kind of last moments, they're very overwhelming. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of family members. There's dealing with nursing staff and doctors and all these different things. And I think sometimes people come in and on top of their grief, what they can have is, I wish I had done this. Oh, I just wish I had done that. I wish I had said this, because it's all coming at them at once. So this advanced kind of thinking about this and planning is really wonderful. And sometimes the regrets kind of come in 2 different ways, because one of the things that can happen when we are, bearing witness to a loved one suffering, and also bearing witness to our family members suffering as we're losing someone, is we're feeling the grief. And there's 2 ways of sort of coping with that for people. Some people will sort of move into kind of anger and argumentativeness. It's a very normal part of grief, you know. We can all identify a little bit with that, I think. And some people will move into more withdrawn types of places or pulling back. These are 2 ways that people try and cope with their pain. And the thing about these 2 ways, though, is that this is where we kind of get those regrets.
Right.
We look back and we think, oh, I wish I didn't argue with the nursing staff so much. I wish I didn't argue with my brother or my sister. I wish I just kept it more peaceful.
Right.
I wish I didn't say that thing to my father. These kinds of things.
Right.
And they're all par for the course, but with a little bit of advanced planning, we can kind of avoid some of that.
Right. I've seen people that have talked about experiences of their father or their spouse dying, and when they saw that those individuals' pain wasn't managed, that they weren't kept comfortable, and they felt powerless to do anything about it. I was with a friend who was in the hospital dying of cancer, and all he could talk about was the pain of just moving from the bed to go down to radiation and back, and he didn't live a week after that.
Right.
And so much of his last days were spent in pain and discomfort, and I think the family members then end up with guilt, don't they?
Absolutely.
They felt like they didn't intervene and help them avoid that scenario.
Absolutely. And I mean, it is difficult to witness someone in pain, and sometimes we distract ourselves too through all these other ways. And we do look back and we think, I wish I had stayed present with him. I wish I had stayed present with her. Why didn't I have the foresight to, keep my focus on the person who was dying?
Right. And I think when we don't talk about pain management up front, so wish 3 begins with a statement that says, I don't want to be in pain, I want it managed. And people can nuance it and say, but I also want to be alert. So strike a balance. I don't want to just be sedated. I want to be able to find that right balance. And that's an ongoing discussion with the family member as your healthcare agent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And saying to family members, I want you to be actively conversing with the nursing staff. That's also really important, that you're advocating for me with the doctors and the nurses, because I mightn't be able to do that as well as I could before.
Right. And I've found too that These issues of comfort really focus on hospice care and the power of palliative care and what it can do, because it addresses that while they're treating your medical condition, they're also treating you as a human. Right. And you want to be comfortable and you want to be kept clean, for example. You know, I struck out, I don't want a warm bath, but you know, some people may want warm baths.
I would want a warm bath.
There you go. So I guess that's the divide.
Okay.
But I crossed through that, but I do want to be kept clean.
Absolutely.
And so these instructions also give family members by the bedside some guidance on, here are things I can do when I'm with someone who's with my spouse or with my son or whomever is sick. Here are things that I can do so I'm not just standing there feeling awkward and not knowing what to do.
Absolutely. And I think for people maybe who haven't been through these things before with another loved one, it prompts them. It helps them understand these are the kinds of things that will be coming. So be prepared, you know. And the other thing is that, you know, staff can be busy. They have many patients. So it's really important that someone who is dying has an advocate who's prepared.
That's right. When we come back next week, we're going to talk about Wish 4 and dignity and other issues that are spiritual and personal for folks who are in times of serious illness. This will be a document not only helping the family members, but the individual, the patient himself or herself. So please join us next week.